I've never been one for workplace drama. I'm not the guy who storms into HR or makes a big scene at meetings. I like to think of myself as professional, quietly reliable, the guy who gets things done even when everything's falling apart. But sometimes being the reliable guy just makes you the perfect doormat. I worked at a mid-sized tech consulting firm. Nothing too flashy, but solid, good clients, decent projects, stable income. I was the lead on a massive digital transformation for one of our biggest accounts, a major national retail chain looking to overhaul their entire back-end systems, website architecture, inventory database, and customer-facing platforms. The scope? Enormous. The deadline? Unrealistic. The budget? Tight. But I didn't complain. I saw it as an opportunity, one of those career-defining projects people mention in interviews for the next decade. And for 6 straight months, I bled for it. I worked through weekends. Cancelled plans with my girlfriend so I could revise wireframes or fix a deployment script that no one else could figure out. I became the point person for everything, the architect, the troubleshooter, the technical translator between the client's execs and our dev team. You'd think someone in my position would have some support. Nope. Enter Karen, my manager. Her job, supposedly, was to oversee the project and ensure everything moved smoothly. She attended the kickoff call, nodded enthusiastically, said something about streamlined synergy, and then disappeared. For months, she was a ghost. Missed stand-ups, ignored emails, popped in occasionally just to forward me a new ask from the client, then took full credit when things got done. Worse, whenever we had executive reviews, she somehow positioned herself as the mastermind. She'd use phrases like, "Our team has been diligently executing," and "I've been coordinating with the client closely," when the only person the client actually knew and spoke with was me. One time, during a call, the client asked a question about our proposed API integrations. Karen, caught off guard, smiled and said, "Great question. Let me circle back with our technical team and get you a detailed breakdown." 5 minutes later, I got a ping from her. "Hey, what do they mean by API layers? Can you write up a summary I can send?" I should have been furious. But I wasn't. I was disappointed. Still, I told myself, just push through. You're not here for applause, you're here to deliver. So I kept going. I documented every change. Tracked every sprint. Liaised with 5 departments. Cleaned up junior developers' messy code at midnight. Smoothed over client concerns. Rebuilt broken modules with no sleep. And through it all, I thought, surely, at the end of this, someone's going to recognize what I've done. Spoiler, they didn't. Not even a simple "thank you." No acknowledgement in meetings. No email shout-out. Nothing. In fact, in one monthly update, Karen listed key contributors, and I wasn't even mentioned. I chalked it up to oversight. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she assumed I didn't need praise. But then I started noticing a pattern. Karen always scheduled executive updates when I was too busy to attend. She downplayed my involvement when talking to other departments. And most telling of all? She never once copied me in emails that went higher up, especially ones where she summarized progress or discussed challenges. She wasn't just forgetting me. She was erasing me. At this point, I felt trapped. If I spoke up, I'd sound bitter or egotistical. If I stayed quiet, I'd keep getting walked over. So I kept my head down and kept grinding, hoping, naively, that my work would speak for itself. But deep down, something had started to shift. I didn't feel like I was building my future anymore. I felt like I was building hers. About 3 weeks before the big presentation, the final pitch to both our board and the client's executive team, I got the calendar invite, performance review, 1:1 with Karen. I wasn't nervous. In fact, I walked in expecting something positive. Maybe not a massive promotion, but at least a raise. A title change. A sign that the company recognized what I had put into this project. I'd gone above and beyond. Everyone knew it. Even the dev team called me the project firefighter. I figured Karen might even be planning a little surprise. You've done so well, we want you to lead the next big client, or something like that. Instead, I got a lukewarm smile and a corporate slap in the face. Karen leaned back in her chair and said, "So, let's talk about how this quarter has gone for you. I've had some feedback." I nodded, mentally preparing for some constructive criticism. No one's perfect. I expected maybe a note about delegation or time management. Then she dropped it. "You've been a bit invisible." I blinked. "Sorry?" She continued, "I know you're involved in the client project, but I think you need to work on being more present. More visible. Leadership is about showing up, being seen." I sat there, stunned. I had led every sprint meeting. Answered every client email. Jumped in to solve last-minute bugs when other people panicked. I was the one who stayed late to get that last-minute database restructure in before the end-of-month milestone. What the hell did she mean, invisible? She kept going. "You've done fine. But I just don't know if you're ready for more responsibility. There's still some maturity and confidence I think you need to build before you take on a true leadership role." I felt like I'd been punched. Fine? No leadership potential? I had carried a multi-million-dollar project on my back while she gallivanted around pretending to be a visionary, and I wasn't leadership material. I realized then that this wasn't ignorance. It was intentional. She wasn't overlooking me. She was keeping me out of the spotlight. The more I succeeded quietly, the more she could take credit for my work without challenge. She wanted me invisible, because I was useful that way. Disposable. Convenient. And I was done playing along. I kept my composure through the rest of the review. Smiled politely. Said all the right things. Thanked her for the feedback. But inside, something snapped. I walked back to my desk that afternoon, shut the door, and sat down. For the first time in months, I didn't open Jira. I didn't check client emails. I opened a blank document titled Exit Strategy. I didn't want revenge. Not in the dramatic, slash her tires, kind of way. What I wanted was clarity. Control. A way to leave that wouldn't burn bridges, but would light up a truth she couldn't hide from. So I looked at the calendar. The final client presentation was scheduled for the Monday after next, 3 days after my 2-week notice would expire. Perfect. I could leave cleanly, no outbursts, no HR drama, and let her walk right into the biggest meeting of the year completely unprepared. Because make no mistake, she needed me. The entire architecture, implementation, roadmaps, and technical justification behind our plan, it was all in my head. Sure, I'd written documentation. But not the kind of stuff you could present confidently to a boardroom full of high-level execs. Karen had skimmed everything. She didn't even know the difference between a flat database and an event-driven queue. But she assumed I'd still be there. She counted on it. She thought I was the good little soldier who would stick around and help her shine, even after she'd humiliated me. She didn't realize that I'd reached my breaking point. So I made a list. What systems needed handover? What documentation could I remove that I had personally authored, legally mine? What accounts did I need to transfer access from? What version of the deck did she have, and what notes did I need to quietly strip? I was methodical. Calm. Surgical. And through it all, I smiled like everything was fine. I even thanked her at the end of our next team meeting. Just wanted to say how much I've learned these past few months, I said, straight-faced. Karen smiled like she'd already won. "You've grown a lot," she said. "You have no idea," I thought. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, even earlier than usual. I wanted to get ahead of everyone, especially Karen. I went straight to HR and handed in my 2-week resignation. The HR rep blinked in surprise. "Oh, we didn't expect that." I smiled politely. "It's about time." She asked the usual questions. New opportunities? Higher salary? Moving? I kept my answers vague and professional. There was no need to drag Karen into this. Not yet. That would come later, of course. When Karen found out, she didn't even blink. There was no worry on her face. No follow-up questions. Just a practiced nod and a nonchalant, "If that's what feels best for you. Just make sure you hand off your work properly." I could tell, she thought I was bragging. Or maybe she thought I would feel guilty and show up to help her with the final pitch. In her mind, she was still in control. She had no idea what I was about to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what I now call a quiet dismantling. No drama. No burned files. No deleted folders or vandalized links. I wasn't that kind of person. I would walk away with my head held high. But I also wouldn't leave her a safety net. I started handing off tasks to a junior associate, Jason. Nice guy. Nice guy. But completely unprepared to lead a customer-facing implementation. I gave him the overview, the summary, and said, "Let me know if you have any questions." I made sure Karen saw me coaching him, as if everything was under control. He was panicking. She had no idea. I went through the project files and marked all the official documents as mine, plans, diagrams, internal tools I'd built on my own time. Anything that wasn't covered by an NDA or owned by the client, I deleted. What remained was usable, but superficial. Anyone with a thoughtful question would get a blank stare. I also cleaned up the main presentation. Not by deleting the slides, no, that was too obvious. I simply deleted all the speaker notes, removed the supporting references, and left the skeleton intact. Karen wouldn't even realize it was empty until it was too late. I emailed clients personally, in a professional way, to let them know I was leaving. I thanked them for their cooperation, assured them that my team would continue to support them, and wished them success. They responded, surprised and a little worried. "You're the linchpin of this whole thing," one executive said. "Is someone going to take over the implementation plan?" I said Jason would be their new point of contact. I wasn't lying. I just didn't sugarcoat anything. I stopped attending unnecessary meetings. I forwarded everything to Karen. "See you around," I wrote over and over again. She didn't get the irony. Last Friday, I brought in donuts. Said goodbye to the team. Handed back my badge. Karen shook my hand and said, "Thanks for your help. I'm sure we'll see each other again in the industry." I smiled and said, "Oh, I don't doubt it." Then I walked out, back straight and calm, into the cool spring air. That weekend was the first time I'd truly relaxed in months. I slept like the dead. Had dinner with my girlfriend. Went for a long walk with my dog. And all the while, I knew what was waiting for Karen on Monday morning. I didn't need to do anything more. I'd done enough, by quitting. She didn't just lose an employee. She lost the only person who could make her look competent. Who could answer the tough questions. Who could get her through that shining moment she'd been chasing for months. And she didn't even realize it. On Monday morning, at exactly 9:12 a.m., I got the first text. "Karen. Hey. You coming to the conference room? We need you to get things started," smiley face. I didn't respond. At 9:23 a.m. "Seriously, where are you?" The presentation is about to start. I muted the chat. Then another ping. Are you really doing this? Yes. Yes, I did. I hung up and poured myself another cup of coffee. I had no plans. No calls. No meetings. I was free. Meanwhile, Karen was standing in front of a room full of suits and executives, holding a sketch of a presentation she didn't understand, of a project she barely touched. And the worst part? She had no one to blame but herself. While Karen stood in front of the boardroom that Monday morning, I was sitting in my kitchen, still in sweatpants, sipping coffee like I'd just retired. And in a way, I had retired from her circus, at least. I'd already turned off my phone, but I couldn't stop imagining what was happening back at the office. The looks on the clients' faces. The awkward pauses. Karen's forced grin slowly fading as she realized she was utterly, completely alone up there. Later, I didn't have to imagine, because a friend of mine, Brian, who was still on the project team, gave me the play-by-play. And it was even better than I expected. It started like any other executive pitch: coffee in carafes, pastries no one touched, and a projector screen glowing with the company logo. The clients arrived first. 5 of them, including their COO, their head of operations, and their in-house tech director, who had always been sharp as a blade and twice as skeptical. Then came our own execs, VPs, directors, the CTO, and of course, Karen. Karen strutted in, confident, clipboard in hand, heels echoing like she owned the place. She stood near the screen, cleared her throat, and said, "Thanks for coming, everyone. Let's get started." She clicked the remote. The first slide appeared. Silence. She glanced at the screen. No speaker notes. No intro cue. No welcome context. Just the title. Phase 1, Infrastructure Migration. She hesitated. Right, so this is where we began the first stage of transformation. It was, data-related. A pause. Someone coughed. Karen clicked to the next slide. More silence. The slide had a diagram I'd built, a complex system map, but without my embedded notes, it was just arrows and acronyms. Karen squinted, clearly trying to remember. This section shows the, core integration with the database layer. Which, as you can see, connects to the ERP. The tech director from the client side frowned. Which ERP system? You proposed 2 in the last iteration. Karen froze. Right. Yes. Well, the one we settled on. He raised an eyebrow. Which one was that? Karen looked at her notes. Nothing. She flipped a page. Still nothing. Someone shifted in their seat. The CTO leaned forward, glancing at Karen like she was a kid trying to explain how a jet engine worked using only crayons and hope. Karen stammered, We had a consensus that we'd move forward with the, Jason? Do you have the file? She looked to Jason. Poor Jason. He was sitting 3 rows back, pale as chalk, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. He mumbled something about checking his laptop, but everyone could tell he was just stalling. The client's COO cleared his throat. Sorry, where's my name? He's been our main point of contact throughout this process, hasn't he? Karen tried to smile. Oh, he's moved on to other opportunities. But don't worry, we've got everything covered. The tech director shook his head slowly. Apparently not. That was just the beginning. Over the next 20 minutes, Karen fumbled through every technical slide. She didn't know the projected migration timeline. She couldn't explain the fallback plan. She had no clue how the new middleware API handled multi-region scaling. She mispronounced the name of the database software. Twice. And when asked to walk through the deployment plan, she actually said, "That's more of an implementation detail." The client's COO snapped back. "This meeting is about implementation." Then the boardroom went silent. Not out of respect, out of awkwardness so thick you could bottle it and sell it as fog. Karen was cooked. After the meeting, our execs were furious. Not just because Karen bombed, but because it was clear she had no idea what the project actually was. They'd trusted her to lead, to represent the company, to close the deal. And instead, she exposed the fact that everything they'd promised the client came from someone who no longer worked there. Me. The client delayed signing immediately. They requested more time to reassess technical confidence. A polite way of saying, "We don't trust you anymore." Within 48 hours, the deal was on ice. By Friday, Karen had been pulled from the project completely. Not fired, yet, but quietly stripped of authority, left out of strategy meetings, and told she'd be transitioning to internal support functions. Which is corporate speak for, "You're lucky we don't show you the door today." I didn't gloat. Didn't post anything online. Didn't brag. But when Brian texted me, "Bro, she melted down," I allowed myself a very satisfying smirk. She underestimated me. She assumed I needed her. She thought being a manager meant taking credit and giving orders. But she forgot the most important rule of leadership. Don't burn the bridge you're still standing on. And now that the bridge was gone, she fell straight through. I didn't hear from Karen again after that Monday. No email. No apology. No weak attempt at pretending she'd meant to include me or just forgot during the review. I wasn't expecting one, and honestly, I didn't want it. Because I knew exactly what kind of person she was, someone who only remembered your name when she needed you to bail her out, and conveniently forgot it the moment credit or recognition was being handed out. The company didn't reach out either. At least not officially. But word gets around. Within 2 weeks, I got texts from 3 different colleagues. "Hey man, just wanted to say, what you did? Legendary. You were the backbone." No one doubted it. It just took this mess for them to realize. Karen's been moved to special projects, which basically means she's in the broom closet now. I didn't dance or throw a party, but I'll admit, I smiled. I'd already started my new job by then. A leaner company, smaller team, tighter focus. In my second week, my new manager called me into her office, just to ask how I was adjusting. Not because something was wrong. Not because I'd missed a deadline. Just to check in. She said, "I read through your portfolio and saw what you built for your last client. That's impressive. You led that alone?" I nodded. She smiled. "Glad you're here." 5 words. That's all it took. And yet those 5 words felt more genuine than anything Karen had said to me in 2 years. The funny thing is, I didn't leave to make a point. I left because I was done. Done with being invisible. Done with handing over results and watching someone else bathe in the spotlight. But the fallout from my exit? That wasn't just karma. It was cause and effect. Karen had built her entire role on a foundation she didn't even understand, a house of cards stacked on my shoulders. And when I stepped away, it collapsed on cue. Brian later told me that Karen tried to pin things on me for about a week. "She said you didn't train Jason properly," he said. "But everyone saw how much time you spent onboarding him." Then she claimed you didn't document things clearly, until someone pulled up your internal wiki, versioned and timestamped. She was grasping at straws. And each one crumbled in her hands. Eventually, leadership stopped defending her. Not because of what I said, I never said a word, but because of what she showed them when left on her own. Nothing. No substance. No clue. She was a figurehead with no ship, trying to steer in a direction she never even helped plot. About a month later, I ran into our former CTO at a local industry event. He spotted me near the coffee stand and walked over. "Hey," he said, shaking my hand. "We miss you over there." I smiled. "Appreciate that." He paused. Then added, "You know, that presentation day? That was a disaster. But it taught us something." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" He nodded. "Taught us who was doing the real work. Next time we see a star in the making, we won't let someone else dim it." It was a small moment. But it meant a lot. And as for me? I started sleeping better. I stopped grinding my teeth at night. I actually enjoyed my weekends again. The truth is, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to yell, expose, or shame anyone. All I had to do was leave. Let them face what they created. Let them navigate the mess they ignored. Let them realize, far too late, who was really holding everything together. Sometimes, the quietest exits leave the loudest echoes. And the people who underestimate you? They never hear the silence coming. Until it's already surrounded them.